it's important in what you do to be impartial and not an advocate, right? That's correct. And it's important, correct, in being impartial to avoid speculation, right?
Yes.
And it's important to avoid speculation when you prepare a report or give conclusions to the report. Because if you are speculating, it could undermine the credibility and reliability of the entire expert report, correct?
At least those sections where the speculation occurs, and perhaps more. I'm sure that's on a case-by-case basis.
And you were just testifying, right, that you know nothing about the electrical contracting industry, but you're surprised you didn't see as much activity as you thought you would?
I know data theft cases and allegations from being both on the plaintiff and defendant side of those cases, and so those. And then it does surprise me that there's no evidence that's being proffered there. So it's just my surprise.
Well, what's your experience in the electrical contracting industry?
Outside of my house and hiring electrical contractors for my house, I have none.
So anything you had to say about how much activity you think should come or shouldn't come is speculation, right? You know nothing about this industry.
Data theft. I am answering your question, and I believe I am. Data theft, whether it is theft of state secrets, or theft of electrical contractor work, or theft of financial services information, from a computer perspective, those cases look the same. The data looks the same. The evidentiary pieces that we're looking at, they look the same. And it's just the content that's different. So when I look at what I looked at for the government, it doesn't matter what the content is, it's the metadata around it that I'm looking at.
So Chinese hacking of Alcoa that we've been reading about, or electrical contracting, or water filtration, it's all the same, and we're going to see all the same kind of activity as far as you understand as an expert.
The case was right. A lot of the activity will be very similar.
So all three of those cases would be similar.
No, because you're talking about an external actor versus the insider threat. External actors are going to have different things that they're after, and insiders are going to be behaving differently because they have direct access to the data, whereas the external actor has to come in through the outside or whatever means they're going to use to gain a level of access that the insider has. So while the aim is the same in terms of getting to data and potentially proprietary confidential data, how they get there is different.
And in this case, you haven't done any analysis of the MJE system itself, right?
Examine the components of the MJE system that look to be relevant here.
The laptops?
Yes, and the external devices that have been provided.
Have you looked at the network itself?
I have not.
Have you looked at Jeff Dabb's laptop?
I have not.
Do you know who Jeff Dabb is?
I do not.
Have you looked at any personal laptops that may belong to any of these individuals that we just looked at among the 6 people who have plugged in USB devices into the MJ Electric system?
I have not.
Have you looked at the home computer of Laura Voss?
I have not.
Have you looked at the home computer or laptop of Luke Voss?
I have not.
Have you looked at the home computer of Paul Schumann's wife?
I have not.
Did you know that Paul Schumann, who we've been talking about, had his Seagate device at home?
I know that he had it in his possession. I presume it was at home or at work or wherever he's at.
Now, and as it relates to the claims, you know nothing about the claims in this case, right?
Nothing past potentially allegations of data theft.
So when we discussed that in May, I asked you if you knew nothing about the claims in this case. You said that was correct, right?
If you're reading from the transcript and that's what the transcript says, I'm sure that's the case.
Yeah, let me help you. clarify here, I'm looking at page 16 of the deposition transcript of Michael Weil. Deposition was taken on June 10th, 2014.
All right.
And on page 16, lines 9 and 10 are the relevant lines. And I asked you, maybe recall, Mr. Weil, do you know anything about the claims in this case? Answer, no. So, do you know anything about the claims in this case?
On page 16, there's a question about, that goes on in line 11, do you know this is a trade secret case? That's my understanding, yes. How did you get that understanding? I've worked a number of these types of cases before, that's one piece, there's some inference in there from my experience. There's other pieces, just the description of the nature of the case. Where did you get the description of the nature of the case from? It's from Shaw Fishman. I'm not sure what kind of impeachment that was.
Well, I don't know what your reading was. How's that? But I'm asking, do you know anything about the claims in this case?
I don't know anything about the specifics. I know the general, that this is something related to data theft.
And as far as you know, Mr. Weil, all of the 47 missing devices in this case left Sargent's property with the former Sargent employees who are now MJ elected employees, right?
I don't know that one way or the other.
And you're confirming now for this court that 7 USB devices that were plugged in at Sargent Electric have been plugged into the computer laptops used at MJ Electric, right?
No.
There's 7, right?
No. My testimony is that I can confirm that there were 6 devices that were connected to Sargent computer systems and to MJ electric computer systems. There is a 7th device, which is not referenced in the LakeCo report, which is the only basis that I have to go on a device being attached to a Sargent computer system. And in this case, that particular device that I examined was not attached, not indicated as being attached to a Sargent computer system.
Well, that raises a good point. Your report's dated June 29, 2014, right?
The supplemental report, yes.
And as a result, that doesn't take into consideration any testimony that was given on Monday of this week by Paul Schumann, correct?
That's correct.
And this report doesn't consider the fact that Paul Schumann sat here on Monday and said he had a Seagate device that he plugged into his Sargent laptop on February 25th, right?
Objection to
Does this report,
I don't even know. He wasn't here, Your Honor.
Does this report consider that? And they've had multiple days.
Well, I mean, if he knows of any times.
Okay. Thanks, Your Honor.
Okay.
All that I know, I don't know what Mr. Schumann's testimony was or was not. All that I know is that regardless of Mr. Schumann's testimony, the Russian report does not reference this device.
And the only thing that your supplemental report and your original report, let's take a look at your original report today.
That was 69 again?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Wow. If you look with me for a second, are you familiar with the fact that the device that was plugged in to the Mr. Paul Schumann had at Sargent was called a Seagate device.
Where are you referencing that here?
I'm trying to find out, do you understand that he had a Seagate hard drive?
Yes.
Mr. Paul Schumann?
Yes.
You examined that, right?
Yes.
And that Seagate device was plugged in on March 3rd, 2014, into his MJ laptop, right?
That's correct.
And with respect to your review, did you look at the device to find out what information was on it from February 25th going backward?
No.
For 4 years?
No.
No. So your analysis didn't look to see were his contacts included, Mr. Schumann's contacts loaded onto that Seagate hard drive?
I don't know.
And you have no basis to refute his testimony, obviously, that he did that, right?
If that's what he testified to, I have no basis to refute that. I looked at, as I testified, March 2014 forward.
And as it relates to the scope of the assignment, since this maybe is a decent segue to that, you weren't asked to do any keyword searches on these devices, right?
That's correct.
You weren't asked to look at the word Sargent, correct?
I was not.
You weren't asked to look at the words BP?
No.
Or ArcelorMittal?
No.
Or USS?
No.
Or OSBL?
No.
Or WRMP?
No.
And do you understand that those are all relevant descriptions of entities or projects in this case?
Objection, foundation. I already argued that he didn't know anything about the industrial contracting business.
This goes back to point number one, which is speculation, Your Honor. That's why I'm asking this one.
Well, you might want a foundation if he knows if those things have any relevance to the case.
And he's asking about a search he didn't perform, so I don't understand his point.
I think he can get into whether or not he did it, and if they're relevant to the case, and if he knows they are.
Yeah.
I've lost the question.
Yeah,
Fully catch it now.
I think that the question was, did you do searches with respect to any of those entities or acronyms?
No.
Now, you also asked a couple of questions about copying onto the system, or different laptops, right? And I think one of the spots we stopped for that discussion earlier was Exhibit C. Mr. Wong? I believe that's correct. If you still staying with your original report, Exhibit 69, and turning to Exhibit C as in Charles. Appendix, thank you. Mr. Goodbye. I'm with you. And if you look with me at page 7 of 8. You there? I am. Now, with respect to page 7 of 8, and now we're looking at the appendix that you created that related to the USB device that was attached to the MJE laptop of Jim Simmons.
This is a report of the Simmons MJE electric laptop during the time frame of the USB device attachments.
And this reflects this report reflects copying, correct, of information from a USB device onto the MJE system, correct?
It reflects copying from an unknown location to this system.
And so an unknown location would be from either a USB device or an external hard drive. Would those be two possibilities, correct?
Those are the possibilities among the MJ electric network and other locations that are accessible to the system.
Right. So a USB device, like a flash drive or a thumb drive, is one possibility that would allow for the copying that we're going to talk about in a second, right?
Yes.
And so would an external hard drive, right?
I would imagine those are probably going to be the same.
And if we look for a second on page 7 of 8, and probably the best way to arrive at the spot that's relevant is to look at the column that says last modified. Okay. You see that?
I do.
And we quickly fall into a name that's been uttered many a time in this courtroom over the last few days, monosol. You see that? I do. And there's a description here under file name of E-1-1 period PDF. You see that? I do. And then as you read across, that's the line which we're going to show our time here for a second. If you look at full path, can you describe to the court what that means, full path?
The full path is the location of the file on the hard drive or the storage system. And in this particular case, the d/James.Simmons/desktop is actually, as you're looking at Windows, when it logs in for you, this is the location where the files you see on your desktop when you log in. That's where these files are located.
And then created date 4/16/2014 at 18:50:01. Do you see that?
I do.
And created date again means the date that this particular document would have arrived on the MJE system, correct?
Typically the case, yes.
And here, using what I think you just described about UTC time, at this time of year, which is daylight savings time, the difference would be 5. So we're looking at 3:50 p.m.
I believe that would be 1:50 p.m.
1:50 p.m. I'm sorry about my math here. That's right. Military time gets us to 13.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So we're at 1:50 p.m. And then when we go to last modified, it says 7/24/2013, right?
Yes.
And that says 11/43/30. You see that?
I do.
Now, this reflects copying of this document onto the MJE laptop because the last modified date comes prior in time to the 4/16 date, right?
Yes, that's one part of it, yes.
And on July 24th, 2013, Mr. Simmons was an employee of Sargent Electric, as far as you know, correct?
I don't know if he was employed at that time or not.
And this reflects, though, a USB device that was plugged in to his laptop on 4/16/2014, right, Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
And copying?
And copying activity from another location, yes.
Right. And then unknown location, meaning you don't know the serial drive of the specific device from which this copying is occurring?
We don't know what the source of the data is. It could be the network, it could be the device, it could be anything that the laptop is attached to.
And then here's where I guess the questions come in. And you haven't had any discussion with Mr. Simmons about this particular item. And what it was that he was using in order to move Monosol E11 PDF onto his MJE laptop, right?
No, I've not had any discussions whatsoever with Mr. Simmons.
Yeah, and council hasn't had any discussions with you where they identified that they asked Mr. Simmons where this device could come from that allowed for the copying of a Monosol document onto the MJE system as of 4/16/2014, right?
Objection. That calls for privileged communications, and Mr. Simmons testified on this.
Right, that's not privileged communications. If they're conveying information to him as a witness that's factual in nature, that's not advice. Those are facts.
I think he answered, he didn't know what it is or what was copied. I mean, if that's what you're asking, it's simple.
Yeah.
Does he know, or does he have any knowledge of it?
Okay. That's a good question, Your Honor. Do you know or have any knowledge
Of what?
whether or not this device actually came with Mr. Simmons from Sargent?
I do not know.
You also don't know whether he worked on Monosol projects while he was a sergeant, right?
I do not.
And with respect to 7/24/2013 at 11:43:30, it's the next line down. There is a copying occurrence that's occurring here too, right?
Are you referencing, just to be clear?
Yeah, E21 PDF.
Correct. Yes, there's indications of copy there. Yes.
And there's indication of copies in the next line as well, right? 9/4/2013.
Well, no, the copying was on April 16th, 2014.
Well, that's the date the copying occurred, but the document that's being copied dates back to 9/4/2013, correct?
Yes, that's the last modified time of the file being copied.
Right. And the same thing with job log that relates to Monosol. That entry would reflect copying from a source onto the MJE laptop, right?
For job log.pdf.xls, yes.
And I think that you also told the court that a couple of things. One, that the only way to know what's actually on a device is to have that device in hand, right?
To 100% no. Yes.
In this case, we know that 7 different devices of Sargent have been plugged into MJE laptops, and 4 are missing, correct?
I believe it's 6, but we can continue to converse about the 7th because, from my knowledge, that was not identified at Recklinger. For the remaining 6 devices, those devices were attached to MJ electric computer systems.
And now they're missing.
Well, 2 of them were provided, and 4 of the devices, I don't know where they are.
And did you have any hand in trying to ensure chain of custody to preserve these USB devices so that they could be available for review by Sargent or others?
For the 2 that we have access to, yes.
What about the other 4?
The other 4 I was never provided, so I cannot interject myself in the chain of custody without having possession of the device.
Have you asked for the other 4?
I provided the information of showing where the 6 devices are, and I don't know whether I asked or did not ask. That part I don't recall, but certainly the implication is that there's some type of request for those 6 devices.
And if we talk for a second about these initials that have also come in and out of the courtroom with you and Mr. Lano, we've heard the initial C before. In your parlance, is C a reflection or a description of a drive on a laptop or other computer system?
The C drive is going to be the hard drive within a computer system that the operating system comes from.
And when you see different initials like E or F, those reflect moments or occasions when devices may have been plugged into a laptop or a desktop, correct?
That's one of the situations. There's others.
And when you see that a document has been opened on both a C drive and an E drive, that means that documents exist on those different drives, right?
At that point in time, a file by that name does, yes.
And the thing that you're saying to the court, as it relates to certain of the questions earlier today about copying, is that you're unwilling to make the inference that if there's just 10 seconds that occur between the opening of a document on C and its appearance on E, that copying has occurred. But you're not telling the court, correct, that the document doesn't exist on E and C, right?
That's right. There's a file by that name in both locations.
Right. And so if an MRU list shows an opening of a document on E, that means the document exists on E, right?
Yes.
And the document was opened on C, it exists on C, right?
And I want to be clear on this, at that point in time of the opening. And as I mentioned, the E drive could be a network, it could be the Sargent network, it could be any location that it's called mapping a drive. You can map drive letters D through Z from the network. It could also be the USB device, it could be a CD-ROM. There's any number of different locations, just that we have all those different spots on the table.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lowe. And since we're talking about MRU for a second, let's talk about the limitations of MRU. What MRU means is most recently used document, right?
For a particular file type, yes.
And the limitation there is that you can only see the last 50 documents open in any particular category, whether it's a Word document or Excel document or other, correct?
Yes.
But with respect to copying, one of the things that the MRU list would not reflect is whether or not a user at a laptop screen with a USB device inserted was copying by copy and drag, right?
Right. There's a lot of other evidence that would support that type of conclusion. A user such as Mr. Schumann, and I know you weren't here, but he testified that it was common for him to copy and drag, not open and then copy. Copying and dragging files would not show up on an MRU list, right? That's correct. But there's other evidence that would be looked at to support that conclusion.
Including if we were lucky enough to have the USB devices themselves so that we could look at the USB devices to see exactly what were on them, right?
That would be, as I mentioned, that would be the best case. In the absence of that, there's other things to look at to understand what may have been on the device. There's a number of technical areas that we can get into to demonstrate what files may be on those devices in the first place, starting at the Sargent side, and then moving on over to the MJ Electric side. There's a lot of different areas to look at.
have just one last thing I want to show you. So this will be the first time that I'll have to ask Paul, if you will, to participate in the process, but we've got multiple binders, as you can see, Mr. Weil, and I wanted to turn your attention just for a second to the Reclamere report, which is found at Exhibit 101.
I'm with you.
Thank you, Mr. Weil, and thank you, Paul. Now I'm finally catching up with you. So I'm going to one-on-one with everybody else's, and Mr. Weil, what you're looking at directly here in the report, Data Security Experts Exhibit 101, is in fact the Reclamere report that you reviewed and critiqued in your report, right?
That's what it looks like, yes.
And if you, for a second, would turn with me to attachment B, as in boy.
Yes.
There's a reflection of activity by Mr. Boras on the morning of February 10th. Do you see that? There's a USB 2.0 flash disk, USB device that the report reflects was plugged in at February 10, 2014 for roughly an hour and 15 minutes, right?
The USB device?
Yes.
Yes, I see what you're referencing.
And the WB9 Passport 0810 USB device, 1 terabyte, that's the device that you looked at, right?
I have to look at my report to answer that.
You want to look quickly at your report?
I will have to.
Okay. Exhibit 69.
There are wrong numbers, I just looked at the numbers. I see that, yes.
And the technology that's used, the software that's used to confirm when devices are actually plugged into a laptop. What's that called?
There's, I guess it's not technology per se.
Well, I'm sorry, software, whatever the right word is. Can you, so what type of software or other instrument? You tell me what the word is. I think you know what I'm trying to ask you. What device do you use in order to determine when a USB device has been plugged into a laptop?
Well, I'm trying to answer the question. I think you're trying to ask.
Okay.
It's not so much a device. The USB device attachment is recorded in a couple of locations in the Windows operating system. One of them, there's a log file called the device log that records when the device is attached. There's another location called the Windows registry, which tracks pretty much all of your preferences, settings, the MRUs we've been discussing, amongst many other items in the system. So I don't know that I necessarily use a device. I mean, the data is just there.
Okay.
The evidence is on the computer system.
Okay.
To answer your question, I would use a computer to get the computer reference.
Okay, terrific. And the and your report does not refute in any way that on the same day, just minutes before, actually about an hour before, Mr. Voss had in his laptop a USB 2.0 flash disk USB device, right?
I have no basis to refute that one way or the other. And I don't know if it was Mr. Voss or somebody else for that matter.
And I think you don't have any evidence that other people were strolling in and out of his office that morning the day he resigned, right?
Well, as we talked about, I don't have any experience with the electrical industry, so I would not be a sergeant on February 10th, 2014.
Right. Okay, those are my questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Redirect.
Briefly, Your Honor.
Actually, I only have one question.
Mr. Weil, Mr. Kelly asked you whether you had looked at MJ's network and Jeff Davin's laptop and people's personal devices and their relatives' devices. He also asked you if you've done any keyword searches. Do you think that not doing those things is a reasonable criticism of the scope of your analysis under the circumstances of this case and the findings set forth in the Revenue report?
Your Honor, I object to that question. What? Now it's pure speculation. Are my questions reasonable?
I think he's...
He's being criticized for the scope of his analysis, Your Honor. He's not.
What is doing a keyword search relevant to what we're trying to establish?
Why didn't you conduct a keyword search? Why didn't you search the computers of people's relatives?
You can ask that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Looking at this, as I mentioned before, we're looking to draw the line on what's going on with the computers. And in this case, we looked at 6-7 devices, and we found explanations and evidence of file copy on 2 of them, and we've taken that to the end of, all right, we know what files have been copied, we know that these files have been copied. What are the relevance of these files in the case? That's not for me to say, because as we've talked about, I don't know anything about the electrical industry. So we found some data. Now, there's, it costs money to do these investigations and to conduct a keyword search to look at additional systems. That costs money, and and it's up to suspect you, Your Honor, to decide where that ends. And is there enough information to say we should go to the ends of the earth to identify if there's Sargent data on these computer systems in whatever form they are, or is there some other threshold? Is there been enough investigation done to say we've accounted for these 7 devices and we have no indication but for 2 of them what the copy activity is, and then for the 2 that there is indication activity of copy activity, we've identified what the scope of that activity is.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. You may step down. No?
We'll rest our
You
case.
rest?
We'll rest, Your Honor, and I will assume it's time for a lunch break.
Is there any rebuttal? Any rebuttal?
No.
Okay, so take a break and then come back and do your closing.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, 1 o'clock.
Guys.